Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Sonic the Hedgehog here, aka the Blue Blur, aka Blue Justice, and I am back for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Sonic Rush for the Nintendo DS. So, last time, we've essentially manage to able to explore into Zone 3, which appears to be Mirage Road, as well as Zone 4 in Journey Forms of Night Carnival. And oh no, we actually did those two zones, no problem. Not too many deaths here and there, which I suppose that's definitely a good thing. Up until when it gets to the point about the fact that you know what I'm talking about as soon as we get to the later zones. And also, in addition to that, we also did manage to obtain not only the third Chaos Emerald, but also the fourth Chaos Emerald as well. So, everything else checks out there. So today for this video, as you can tell, we're about to be going into the next zone, and that's what appears to be Zone 5, known as Huge Crisis, which does manage to take place somewhere in a battleship, basically. So because of that though, by the way, I really love the music in this as well, which, if I recall correctly, this song was actually called Jet Jet Rocket. I'm pretty sure that's where it's at anyway, and my goodness, it is such a cool music to listen to. But anyway, yeah, a few things I want to talk about is about the fact that, well, today's date, of course, there is the 10th of May today, in some cases in 2024 today, and I believe, if I recall correctly, we've only got about exactly 13 more days to go until Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Switch Remake is definitely coming. So because of that though, yeah, I'm still basically excited for it, and I believe we've only got about 1 week left until My Little Pony A Several Heights Mystery is going to be coming out on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X/S, PC, Steam, and of course the Nintendo Switch here and there. So, fundamentally speaking though, is about the fact that, speaking of which though, I can't even believe by saying this, is about the fact that it's been 10 years ago since Season 4 finale did somehow first came out, Journey Forms within the 10th of May in 2014, and while looking back on it though, I found that particular episode of, or to be more accurate though, both parts 1 and 2 of Twilight's Kingdom is pretty much epic in my opinion, especially noticeable. I would say that part 2 is definitely a lot more grander in scale, and on top of that, a lot more epic in the same time, mainly because it does remind me of so much of watching Dragon Ball Z again, especially noticeable because obviously it's so intense. But either way, and also I still love the fact that with the forms of rainbow counterparts of the main 6 does look pretty cool, because it does also kind of reminds me of turn into a Super Saiyan, or Super Sonic, or in Shadow's case, Super Shadow, and all that stuff. Yeah, that was actually a really cool thing back in the day, and that is how about the fact that before they started able to be making some more merchandise when it comes to the forms of Rainbow Power merchandising for its marketing strategy. So yeah, that's as far as I can try to able to explain about this. So because of that though, and there's also another thing I want to mention about this as well. Yes, indeed, I was originally trying to able to mention something relates to the Nintendo Switch department, but let's face it though, I think suffice to say, it's probably best if we let both Mighty and Ray will both mention more about that particular topic during at some point in Journey Forms Event tomorrow, as well as on Sunday, because obviously though, they are both about to be coming back onto playing Super Mario Advance. So just to ensure for the fact that obviously they'll just trying to get a bunch of information out of the way for the sake of the forms of what is going to happening during at some point in the future weeks as well as future months to come. But either way, so yeah, we've basically done with the forms of Special Stage 5 now, so only 2 Chaos Emeralds to go, and as to be expected about the fact that when it comes to special stages nowadays, it's going to get a lot more trickier and difficult, especially with the forms within the 7th and the final special stage for sure. So, yeah, not too shabby right here. So, anyway, as far as I'm aware, with Huge Crisis in mind, that obviously though is about the fact that when it comes to certain levels these days, it's gonna get a little bit tricky at this point, mainly because no matter what though, we have to stumble across into ourselves not only a whole bunch of enemies we have to deal with certain rooms. Also, kind of think about it, certain enemies all look a bit familiar too. That's what appears to be almost inspired by the actual gun troops, or specifically those gun robots from the likes of Sonic Adventure 2. which I will admit it though right away, they do look pretty cool, but on a 2D sprite. So, because like I said before, the majority of the enemies in this game are actually in 2D sprites, whilst compared to Sonic and Tails are usually in 3D sprites almost, likely also for 2.5D sprite, as far as I'm aware. So mind you, it's about the fact that it's been about 2 days ago since I actually have last played this game for sure. Because I'm pretty sure, no matter what though, that Tiana, she's almost finishing up everything for the sake of the forms of Princess Peach Showtime right now. Because I'm pretty sure she's now on to the final boss in the game, I'm pretty sure. And I missed that rainbow ring, which pretty much leads us to the first step of the playthrough, because I was not expecting with the forms of how the fact that there was actually a bottomless pit down below. So, oh well, no big deal though, because obviously though we can able to actually just try to focus at one point, especially noticeable because, yeah, if you try to able to actually interact with those pistons right there, then obviously you're about to get crushed. So because of that though, similar to the forms of how it does it in, you know what I'm saying, with Sonic Advance 3, with the forms of ocean-based level, which as a result, yeah, you get the idea what I was expecting for that particular comparison. Although, luckily there's no underwater elements this time around though, which I suppose that's a good thing, unlike in the majority of Water Powers level, that basically though you have to avoid a lot of water. Well, you can able to actually go underwater, but of course, just like in any other Sonic games at this point, that obviously though is about the fact you have to grab so many air bubbles in order to able to survive in underwater. So yeah, you get the idea what I was expecting. So anyways though, so let's go for this little tube thingy right there and able to hang on to this particular crane, so that way we can able to progress. So, and I was expecting to get that 1-up. I mean, let's face it though, it is so easy to get extra lives in this game though, because like I said before, unlike in Sonic Advance 1, as well as Sonic Advance 2, as well as Sonic Advance 3, that luckily your lives does not reset, because thankfully it's now saved. So because of that though, I fully appreciate about that, which is especially noticeable. I don't think it's possible we can get a game over for the time being, just because, you know, it is so ridiculously easy to get extra lives, ranging from collecting a whole bunch of rings, and on top of that, some occasional 1-ups you might come across into for these 1-up containers, and you name the rest. So, anyways, let's go ahead and just blast through the forms of those robots here, and of course we need to be very careful of this room, because otherwise, if you get crushed by these little moving blocks, you die. So, anyways, let's go ahead and deal with them from here, and there we go. So, and of course we got ourselves yet another 1-up, so that's always pretty swell, even though sometimes we attempt to get hit at one point. So either way though, anyways, let's get to the balls of the actual topics at this point, and that's what appears to be about the fact that, well, I've already said this before, is about the fact that we've only got about exactly 13 more days to go until Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Switch Remake is going to be coming out, but I'm really hoping about the fact that it will receive some very, very good reviews for the likes of that particular remake, because straight to the point that a lot of fans out there are going to be pretty excited able to actually revisit that particular legendary Paper Mario RPG game again, except the fact that obviously you can play the game on the go, with some slight changes from time to time, which you probably get the idea about the fact that we've already on about that ever since in about a couple of days ago or so. So because of that though, yeah, anyways, here we go on to Act 2 on Huge Crisis. So because of that though, now as far as I'm aware, this game does have a multiplayer support, so as a result about the fact that the biggest difference is this time around though, is that rather than just trying to utilize with the Game Boy Advance cable link, so instead, the Nintendo DS does have the unique feature, that's what appears to be wireless feature, like usually wireless as in built in, rather than just trying to buy the wireless adapter separately, unlike the forms of how it does on the Game Boy Advance. Like you can either just try to able to get the Game Boy Advance cable link or the Game Boy Advance wireless adapter, which I think it does the same thing, except the fact it's all completely wireless, just like the forms of how it does it for the, well, the Nintendo GameCube controller Wavebird. So because of that though, except the fact that it does require batteries, I'm pretty sure anyway, for that particular Wavebird controller. Although mind you, it's been a very long while since actually I've last used my GameCube Wavebird controller. Well, that's just mainly because the actual connection with the phones that particular, you know, wireless thing is actually gone acting pretty weird all of a sudden, especially noticeable because I was expecting to try to go back onto playing let's just say Mario Party 4, we're able to actually complete the rest of the story mode where it comes to collecting all of these presents, not only for Peach, but also with Daisy and Wario as well, in story mode anyway. But it's a bit tricky to notice this right about now. Well, that's just mainly because, well, relatively speaking, I was still really hoping about the fact that we're able to actually bring us some even more Nintendo announcements eventually, though, because by that time, until when, you know, Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Switch Remake is going to be releasing on Switch, then obviously I'm going to be still basically excited for it, you know? And on top of that, with the forms of Luigi's Mansion 2 HD as well, which, fundamentally speaking, though, is about the fact that, yes, indeed, we have seen the actual, intro comparison, and, it does look a bit more, high res more than anything. It's basically, it's like, oh goodness gracious, almost gonna get crushed. But thankfully though, we've got ourselves a quick fast reaction time right there, so either way. Also, I just realized, with the forms of that particular enemy, as I saw, yeah, these enemies right there, that it does able to actually have a spring attached to it. It does kind of reminds me like a similar enemy as you find in Journey forms of in, let's just say, in Sonic Triple Trouble or something, or in Sonic Chaos. I'm pretty sure that's what I was thinking about anyway. Well, mind you, it's been ages since I actually have last played, not only Sonic Chaos, but also Sonic Triple Trouble as well. Well, that's just mainly because at this point in time, I'm basically just going to be excited for able to be experiencing a whole bunch of upcoming games in the future. Well, there might be some exceptions here and there, like for instance that, again, I was expecting to try and able to actually get Epic Mickey rebrushed, but I've realized about the fact I don't think I can get that game anymore, mainly because I'm not a big fan of the forms of this whole Shadow the Hedgehog leniency progression system when it comes to the actual story. So because of that though, unfortunately though, getting Epic Mickey rebrushed is still not happening to me. But that's just mainly because at this point in time, I'm just gonna have to focusing on, well, potentially speaking though, if Nintendo decides able to announce the brand new Nintendo system eventually at some point, and then exponentially though, I could be, you know, incredibly hyped about with that particular next upcoming system, if that seems to be the case. So, anyways, time for the boss fight with the forms of in Huge Crisis, and isn't that the exact same design as the forms of how it does it in Leaf Storm, except with a different color? That's awfully familiar, isn't it? So anyways, basically this entire battle plays pretty much exactly the same as the forms of how it does it in Leaf Storm, except your noticeable differences this time around though. Obviously it takes place in a different environment of course, and also he does have more attacks, so because of that though, mind you, we still have to deal with Eggman Negu of course. So yeah, this is the attack I was on about earlier, is that rather than just trying to able to actually rolling from left and right, so instead he does manage to able to get attached to the forms of those specific cannons, and as a result these missiles will come straight at you, and it's your job to able to dodge the larger amount or huge amounts of the forms of those missiles. Sometimes you can either be slower or faster depending on the forms of how well you did in this fight. So relatively speaking I've heard that some people complain about the fact that with the pacing issues when it comes to certain bosses like this, because you always have to wait until when the actual opportunity is able to actually just, you know, try to deal the amount of attacks or somewhat. So because of that though, whilst thankfully though in the future Sonic Rush games or something, ranging from Sonic Rush Adventure as well as Sonic Colors on the DS, despite the fact it's basically like a successor to Sonic Rush with whisk powers and stuff like that, and a removal of not only tricks, but also with the ability to play as Blaze in that game. So either way though, I'm sure about the fact that, darn it, I was too late. So, alright, come on you. Oh god, I did not expect it for that particular multiple hits right here. So, oh jeez, this might take a bit while. But fundamentally speaking though, is about the fact that what I've also noticed is about the fact that there was also to the point where basically I just found out with the forms of that particular you know, anniversaries department, is that potentially speaking though, ever since in about 10 days ago or something, that basically though is about the fact that we've realized that Super Mario Bros. Deluxe for the Game Boy Color has already celebrated its 25th anniversary just recently in 10 days ago. And while looking back in it now, I think it still is more inferior to the forms of how it does it on the superior NES original, alongside with the forms of the Super Mario All-Stars version, but that's just mainly because on Super Mario Bros. Deluxe, on the Game Boy Color version, that obviously though we have to rely on the forms of screen crunch, as we expect at this point. So because of that though, why do I still get the late timing right there to try and able to hit him? That makes the entire boss fight drag on at points. So, and that's generally because no matter what though, I just want to cut to the chase, and well, it's hard for me to say honestly, because I know for a fact that, because like I said before, it's been about 2 days ago since I actually have last played this for sure. But anyway, let's see if we can able to properly try to able to get him at one point. Alright, there we go. Just one more hit. Oh my goodness. And then he's going to do the missile attack again, so... Oh, jeez. I get the horrible feeling I'm probably not going to get the best rank after all, but that's just mainly because I keep missing the actual chances to hit him, and on top of that, the forms of how the fact that he just loves doing that particular missile attacks. So, oh well, no big deal though, because obviously though... Oh, he's doing it again? Oh, jeez. Anyway though, one thing I did not expect is about the fact that there is technically a, yet another Ape Escape game that I did not notice at first up until now, because obviously it's about the fact that since after all, we've got the rest of the entire trilogy of course, like we still got ourselves Ape Escape 1, as well as Ape Escape 2, as well as Ape Escape 3, as well as the forms of the PSP remake of the original called, Ape Escape P, or Ape Escape on the Loose, for those of you who lived in North America. Well, actually as it turns out, there's actually technically yet another Ape Escape game on the PlayStation 2, but to be more accurate though, for the iToy camera. And because of that though, I did not notice at first up until now, because as far as I'm aware, the game was actually gonna call it, let's just say, Ape, or actually kind of think about it, it doesn't call it Ape Escape. But to be more accurate though, iToy Monkey Mania, which obviously features certain familiar monkeys from the likes of the Ape Escape series. So yes, that's actually quite interesting, especially noticeable because no matter what though, it was only playable with the iToy camera itself. Now, if I've seen the gameplay footage of that game, it appears to be something feels a bit remarkably similar to Mario Party, except the fact that you have to use the iToy camera throughout the majority of the game. Like, for instance, the game will include over 50 mini-games that can be played individually, or as part of the forms of the board game-style adventure on Freakily Floaty Island. So, yeah, that does look quite familiar, doesn't it? Well, generally speaking, I was about the fact that I've noticed something is that this is the only Ape Escape game related that does not get released in North America. Well, it did originally came out in Japan, since likely also in 2004, in the August the 5th, but it wasn't until in the European version, alongside with the Australian version as well, that came out in 2005. Whilst meanwhile for North America, much like the forms of how it does it in Sonic Gems Collection on the PlayStation 2, basically though, that game never saw the light of day on the North American version, which I honestly have no idea why does that game never came out on the forms of in the North American version for some reason. So, anyway, I suppose beggars can't be choosers, I guess. I might be curious to check it out, but I highly doubt it, because obviously, for what I've heard, that the game did somehow receive some, well, pretty mixed reception, but we'll talk more details about that in the future if we decide able to get into Ape Escape 2, maybe at some point in the future, but unfortunately though, that particular playthrough is going to be delayed until next year, mainly because we've got a bunch of Sonic games to play, baby, because especially noticeable because, you know, to celebrate with the release of the forms of, or specifically just trying to able to do a countdown of the actual celebration of the release of Sonic Cross Shadow Generations, as we expected. So, anyways folks, here we go on to the 6th zone, and that's what appears to be Altitude's Limit, and this takes place in the skies above. And kind of thinking about it though, out of all the actual zones in this whole entire game, I will say that this zone is by far my least favorite zone in the game. Well, that's just mainly because of quite a few things actually. For one thing, cheap enemy placement, and most annoyingly out of them all though, there's a whole bunch of bottomless pits we have to deal with. So because of that though, yeah, this is what I mean about the fact that this entire level is going to be really difficult, mainly because of the forms if you can't really tell what's up ahead, and you can't really tell if it's actually a bottomless pit. And even especially noticeable, there is actually the most deadliest hazard you will come across into, not just by the forms of this zone, but the next zone after this. So because of that though, yeah, we'll talk more about that later, because here we go on to Special Stage 6. That's basically though we can able to actually obtain the light blue Chaos Emerald, or Silent Emerald, or something like that. Well, I can't really tell what the forms of the particular color word for it, but either way. So of course, there's a bunch of spike balls we still have to avoid, and also when it comes to doing with the quick time events, when it comes to doing with that particular stylus controls right there, that it can get ridiculously fast. So because of that though, and it's also worth noting for, getting certain rings while trying to avoid these spike balls are pretty impossible, which I know for a fact that you have to do like quick fast reaction for able to go past those spike balls. And believe it or not though, when I first got to those special stages, like for instance Special Stage 6, my goodness, it did took me about a couple of tries back then, especially noticeable because I couldn't figure out the layout all that well. When it wasn't until whenever we get to the most infamous special stage in the entire game, which is of course Special Stage 7, you will never believe what it's gonna throw at us. So but anyway, so let's go ahead and deal with this enemy here to boost ourselves some even more rings to obtain, so that should be all pretty swell. Oh yeah, and as far as I'm aware is about the fact I do like the music in Altitude's Limit, because as far as I'm aware, that's not only because it was awesome for the actual sounds, but it's also about the fact that, remember that particular do kind of like sound jingle? That's actually reused quite a lot of times, ranging from results screen and in addition to the forms of that particular, well, specifically in the act results basically. So I missed that. Oh well, no big deal. We've got quite a lot of rings, so we got ourselves about 345 rings. So that should be plenty, and we are done with Special Stage 6. So yeah, only one more Chaos Emerald left, folks, and with that being said, we are almost done with the entire special stages in Sonic Rush. So, pretty cool stuff though, but it wasn't until we've realized that the 7th and the final special stage is always going to be extremely difficult, much like the forms of any other special stage 7s basically, from the likes of ever since in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, alongside with the forms of maybe Sonic the Hedgehog 3, but I found it was a total piece of cake, mind you, because I pretty much know the layout very well, and as far as I'm aware, with the forms of Sonic and Knuckles, and as well as the forms of, what's it say, the Sega Saturn version of Sonic. Dang it, I totally did not expect for that little death right there. So yeah, prepare ourselves with a lot of trial and error in this stage, especially because, oh, there's another special generator right there. But regardless of everything else though, we've already did manage to take care of the 6th special stage no problem, so even though despite the fact that we did occasionally get hit by a lot of spike balls basically, so oh jeez, we got to avoid a lot of enemies, and it's also worth noting for, if you go into the parachute right here, you can't jump out of it. So because of that though, you have to able to be very cautious to not get hit by those enemies, because otherwise if you get hit by certain enemies, not only you lose a bunch of rings, but also it gives you a knockback, and on top of that, it will knock you straight into the forms of not only a bottomless pit, but it's also this instant death laser, which you probably already saw ever since in Journey forms of the earliest segments in Journey forms of an Altitude Limit. And believe it or not though, whenever I first played this particular stage for the first time, then my goodness, I come across into a bunch of game overs on this stage. Well, this is mainly because this stage is insane when it comes to likely trying to able to go for this entire stage itself. Well, this is mainly because it just keeps on going back and forth between the forms of not only for its frustrating trial and error, and there's also certain death situations like almost died right there. But luckily though, thanks to the forms of this air dash, I simply got able to press the jump button and the R button, so just in case I can able to get ourselves a short air time, so that way I can able to actually just to go across through certain chasms. So, and it's also worth noting for is that if you go near to an enemy, you can actually technically perform a homing attack by simply trying to able to jump in midair and press the R button while trying to perform a homing attack. But keep this in mind though, you can only do that technique if you go near to an enemy. So because of that though, because otherwise without it, you simply do a short mid-air dash instead. So, and every once in a while though, we will come across into these pretty cool 3D segments, which appears to be this hang glider right here, which that was like, I would say 4 years before, Sonic will later reuse the actual hang glider in Journey forms of one of those dream events in Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games, specifically on the Wii version, which, as a result, I found that dream events alright, but I'm not very good at it though, but that's just mainly because I just really wish if the lock-on cursor will work on with me properly, so because of that though, that's my take anyway. But regardless of everything else though, is about the fact I still managed to enjoy that event, regardless of the forms of how much preference I did somehow have with it, I guess, so. But like I said before, it's about the fact that this music is so awesome to listen to, especially noticeable. I remember back in the day, there was technically a website. Oh, dang it, I did not know there was actually this little platforms decided to descend at one point. So, yeah, I was not expecting that, huh? But anyway, as I was saying, about the fact that while looking back in Journey forms of in this game in particular, back in 2005 sometime, that I do remember exploring into the actual website, where back in the day, they somehow managed able to bring ourselves some musical choices here and there, with that particular music player, because as far as I'm aware, I remember they only choose about 4 songs in that particular Sonic Rush website, which appears to be not only the boss theme, but it's also with the forms of Altitude's Limit music, and on top of that, Leaf Storm music, and finally, Water Palace music. So because of that though, I was able to look on that particular website back in the day, dozens of times, alongside with the forms of Mario Party 7 as well. Mind you, back in the day, I didn't seem to able to actually get Mario Party 7 Journey forms have been day 1 back in the day, but it wasn't until in 2007 when I somehow managed to receive the game right after Mario Party 8. So, bit of a weird statement when it comes to purchasing certain Mario Party games on one hand, so because of that though, and usually relatively speaking I was about the fact there's a good thing still that I managed able to get myself Mario Party 7 back then for a pretty cheap price compared to nowadays. It's like, my god, it was like 120 quid right now. Like, I don't know if it's just maybe the game itself, or perhaps even maybe with the forms of the bundle with the microphone, or specifically the GameCube microphone. I mean, mind you, back in the day, I did manage to able to choose not only the game itself, but also with the GameCube microphone as well as a bundle, while usually relatively speaking of, because I was attempting to try to get the actual game itself, but I decided to choose with the bundle box instead. So because of that though, that might be a good deal for me back then, whilst compared to, you know, nowadays, it's gonna get extremely expensive, which I'm not exactly sure why, but my guess is about the fact that the Nintendo Wii is almost approaching during that time. I'm presuming so anyway. So, anyway, as far as Altitude's Limit, as far as the actual level itself is concerned, it does kind of reminds me of a similar vibes, as in not only, I would say, Chaos Angel from the likes of Sonic Advance 3, alongside with the forms of maybe Angel Island from Sonic Advance 1, and on top of that, with the forms of most notably out of them all though, is Sky Canyon from the likes of Sonic Advance 2, because as far as I'm aware, it did manage to take place in the skies above, and it has filled to the brim of not only bottomless pits, but also dual die situations, and on top of that, cheap enemy placements from time to time. So because of that though, yeah, generally speaking though, to me though, Altitude's Limit is basically Sky Canyon 2.0, except the fact that with this awesome music in the background, and on top of that, the actual visual presentation is a massive step up or something. So because of that though, kind of hard for me to say for that particular comparison's sake, but regardless of such though, that's what I can really think about it when it comes to like experiencing Altitude's Limit as it is. So anyway, technically speaking though, it's about the fact that there's also another thing I want to point out as well is, dang it, I did not meant to press the R button because that will lead us to death. So Oh jeez, I might waste some lives occasionally though, but nowhere near as much, because back in the day, like I said before, I've got a bunch of game overs and journey forms of this stage whenever I first experienced this stage for the first time, mainly because I wasn't exactly thinking straight of how the level design actually plays out to be in this stage itself. So, anyway though, also, if I've noticed something, is that I noticed about the fact that with the EyeToy peripheral, with the PlayStation 2, has already been out for a very long time ago now. Like, I think it did first came out in 2003, so that's almost roughly 21 years from now, which I do remember this particular peripheral quite well, actually, especially noticeable. There's only one game in particular that I somehow managed to enjoy the most back in the day, and that's what appears to be Sega Superstar. I missed that particular... Oh, I can't judge the actual specific camera angle. Oh, jeez. I was not expecting for that particular landing failure right there. So, oh well, I guess we'll have to try again, I suppose. But anyway, because I do remember playing Sega Superstars a lot with the EyeToy camera peripheral, and I do remember experiencing not only Sonic the Hedgehog, but also with Super Monkey Ball as well. I would say same applies with the forms of the other games as well, but some other attractions are not my kind of thing back in the day. Well, that's just because I never exactly heard about those series up until now. So because of that though, now speaking of which though, is about the fact that I've noticed something. There was actually a compilation game that only existed in North America until 2009, specifically March 19th, and that's what appears to be technically that Sonic Rush did indeed get re-released as part of the Double Pack, which as a result not only contains Sonic Rush, but also with Super Monkey Ball Touch and Roll on the DS. So, as a result, like I said before, it only came out in North America, so mind you, no matter what though, I'm not exactly sure what the package itself actually looks like. I mean, sure enough though, it's actually quite interesting to be able to see some double dual packs at one point where it comes to the forms of certain games all in one particular package or something. So because of that though, hard for me to say honestly, but either way. Oh boy, here we go into, perhaps this, in my opinion, is one of the toughest bosses in the game so far, and that's what appears to be this little boss right here. So basically though, in this boss right here is that you have to dodge a lot of bullets. I will say the hardest part about this fight to me though is definitely the bullets, because obviously though they are way too fast, and on top of all that stuff though, you can't really predict of how to dodge them. Although, potentially speaking though, it's about the fact that if he tries to attack you, you have to do a lot of timing emphasis. Like, you have to jump at the right time on that attack right there, just in case you don't get stunned by the forms of this particular rumble. And also, this game decides to able to introduce into ourselves new forms of that particular Mario Party-esque kind of button control scheme. Because do you guys even remember during the forms of certain mini-games, right? Like, for example, Mecha Marathon in Mario Party 2, where basically we have to press the A and B buttons simultaneously, or should I say, mash those buttons entirely, because as you can tell, if you manage to come across into that point, where basically you don't want to get knocked over by the forms of the arena, just like the forms of how it does it in Leaf Storm boss fight, except the biggest difference is there, is that obviously we have to mash those buttons simultaneously with A and B buttons. So because of that though, if you don't mash those buttons at all, you get knocked over and you die. So because of that though, you just have to able to just hope for the best really. So because of that, this is not going to be the only time we got to do this though. Oh no, there's actually more to it than that, but that'll be for later. So because of that though, let's not mention about this right now. So, oh yeah, if you manage to get stunned by the forms of that particular attack, despite the fact that I somehow missed that particular hit by the way, basically though, if you don't jump at the right time, basically though, you get stunned for a bit, and you're probably not going to get a chance to able to attack Eggman Nega. So because of that though, yeah, it's all about the timing aspect. So because of that though, yeah, you get the idea for this point. I will say that attack is actually way easy to deal with, although despite the fact that sometimes the camera perspective, it feels a bit too much for my liking. But regardless of everything else though, this boss fight is definitely feels a bit more chaotic than the forms of how it does it on any other bosses in this game. So yeah, if you get stunned right there, then there's no way you can be able to get a chance to attack him. So because of that though, definitely a little bit of a tricky fight, which is especially noticeable because we're on the Zone 6, of course. So because of that though, now I'm pretty sure we're almost nearly at the end. in Sonic Story, basically, because as far as I'm aware, is about the fact that, oh jeez Louise, that was close. I will still say that the bullets attack is definitely a little bit tricky to dodge, so because of that though, you only have to rely on the forms that timing jump, so... Alright, so 2 more hits left, and that'll be about it for this fight, even though despite the fact I keep on getting hit most of my time, but luckily the invincibility frames might help you a little bit, although it doesn't usually last for long, that's the only catch. Alright, oh, okay, 1 more hit, just 1 more hit, and that'll be it. Oh man. At least thankfully we got to this attack right here. Oh jeez, I totally forgot he decides to get closer. But hey, at least we finish him off like so. Whew. Definitely a lot more chaotic than before, which is especially noticeable because considering for the fact that we've almost approaching towards the end, in Sonic Story anyway, so anyway, so it looks like that Eggman NECA just somehow got away again, so I wonder what his plan is up for next. So either way, that pretty much does it for Altitude's Limit, so... I won't say it's not as bad as I thought it was going to, but still a little bit of a tricky zone as a result. So because of that though, yeah, you get the idea what I was expecting. So because of that though, so yeah, as I said before, we've now got 6 Chaos Emeralds in total so far, so this means we're now on to the final Emerald, which of course, it will lead us straight into, well, let's say, the 7th zone. Oh look, there's Amy. It looks like that Amy Rose is gonna be hunting for me, isn't she? Especially noticeable because obviously though, although don't get me wrong, she's beautiful to me though, because obviously me and Amy are now hanging out to get together now, which that makes sense from that regard, especially noticeable because we somehow, you know, hedgehogs related, so I guess that makes a little bit more obvious sense to able to notice something like this. Again, mind you, I apologize for my commentary is a little bit iffy at this point today, but that's just mainly because I've already explained quite a few bits here and there, and oh jeez, what is up with that particular Amy's face right here? It, like, she's almost become like Dark Amy form, but awfully close though. Maybe I keep thinking about the forms of one of those episodes I found from the likes of the forms of Sonic X in Journey forms of the final batch of episodes in Sonic X, I'm pretty sure. But either way though, so that being said though, is about the fact that yeah, we must make our way to the 7th zone, which obviously though, that pretty much leads us into, well, almost towards the end of the game basically. So yeah, sorry Amy, but we have to able to sort something out. So because of that though, yeah, with that being said folks, is that we get endings of this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Sonic Rush in Sonic Story. Is that we're going into the 7th zone known as Deadline. So this will be interesting, and hopefully we'll get ourselves the 7th and the final Chaos Emerald. So I'll see you guys until on Monday. Later fellas.